It's a Monday, and we have a great show coming your way on Philadelphia 76ers Now. Hope all of you out there had a fantastic weekend. I don't know about you, but seeing the Celtics go down so badly to the Miami Heat only makes me even angrier that the Sixers lost that series to Boston last round. But now we look ahead to what is probably the biggest Sixers offseason that I can remember in my lifetime. So coming up on today's show, we're going to get you caught up on all of the latest going on with this basketball team. Joel Embiid trade latest. James Harden wants what in free agency? And we have the latest on the Sixers head coaching search as they look to replace Doc Rivers. Before we dive into all of that, though, we've been picking up subscribers like crazy, and I want to challenge all of you out there. Can we get to 10,000 subscribers by the end of this week? If we do that, we're going to celebrate here on the show. I don't know, shotgun a beer or something. 531 people away. If you want year-round coverage on the 76ers, subscribe. And with that, let's start the show. All right, I'm Chase Sr. This is Philadelphia 76ers Now. No matter where you are or how you're tuned in, thank you so much for making today's show part of your day. Let's begin with the latest on Joel Embiid. Marc Stein with some reporting on him over the weekend saying there are no legs to an Embiid trade, yet. But there's been growing media buzz that the New York Knicks are waiting to pounce on Embiid if he decides to ask out from the city of brotherly love. And this all is happening because another early Sixers playoff oust has intensified the pressure around Embiid and whether or not the Sixers can build around him as the number one option to lead this team to the promised land, and if he can ever get past the second round of the playoffs, which this organization has not done since 2001. Let me just spin it into this. Embiid's been silent since the season ended. He deserves it. Won MVP, went out in ugly fashion. Hopefully he has this sour taste in his mouth looking back at that Game 7 film where he saw he didn't have much effort, and if he wanted Doc Rivers to be his coach, he should have tried harder. But could Embiid, who is probably just taking a step back as of right now, be waiting to see with what happens with James Harden? If he seems that James Harden goes to the Houston Rockets, is he going to look at the current situation and current construct of this roster and say, who's going to be my co-star? Is it going to be Tyrese Maxey? How are we going to build this team into a fortified unit so that we can try to compete for an NBA championship this year, but for the remainder of my contract? He might be looking at it saying, I'm 29 years old, I need another co-star, and outside of a half season of Jimmy Butler and a year and a half of James Harden, I haven't had that because Ben Simmons flaked out. Now, I do see why the Sixers would want to trade Joel Embiid. This would only happen if we operate under the premise that they go into full rebuilding mode. He's 29 years old, and they might look at him and say, you're that old, you have this injury history, and as you get older, are the injuries going to go away? Potentially not. His value, the highest that it will ever be. Why? He's coming off an MVP campaign. And if you were to trade Joel Embiid, how many good player assets do you get back? How many draft picks are you able to collect as well if you want to string together this rebuilding process for the team that might trade for Joel Embiid? You could trade him there and say, look, he's at the peak of his powers. He just won the MVP. Was the playoff flame out a little bit ugly? Yes, but he still played with the knee injury. And if you trade for him, you get him at 3 elite years because he has 3 years left on that deal. And if the Sixers do wait and Embiid goes down with an injury, that might just put a huge dent into the value there. You might not get any value back at all, and then you're screwed, and then you have to enter the process era once again, which was awful for all of us as Sixers fans. Of course, some teams might hit pause and say he's 29 years old and he's missed all of these games, but let me give credit to Joel Embiid here. In this load management era in which Kawhi Leonard will sit out a game if he runs into the corner of a table, Joel Embiid still actually plays through a lot of these injuries. And over the last couple of years, you know who's actually missed more games than Joel Embiid? A player like Steph Curry. Now, in the playoffs, he does get injured and misses some time. And while you might look at the numerical figures and say, well, Chase, 2-2, 1-0-1, as far as the missed playoff games, let me tell you this. They come at times in the postseason, and then he's not the same player. So that's where the problem lies here. For Joel Embiid and that contract as well, you look at it over the next couple of years, if he's able to play at an MVP level, then this contract really isn't bad. If he misses a lot of time, and a lot of this Joel Embiid remaining contract is him sitting on the pine in street clothes, and he's making 47, nearly 51 and $54 million with that player option of $58 million in 2026, 2027, which he just recently signed, then it becomes an issue. A free agent at 34 years old, and at that point, what type of player is he? Is he going to be rocking those hefty knee braces that Hakeem Olajuwon was wearing back in the day? Still probably going to be able to get it done as a defensive player. Maybe if he hovers around that three-point arc as well, he'll be able to knock down some three-pointers if he ups the efficiency. But athletically, he's going to be able to bang down in the post. Those are some of the questions there. Can the Sixers win a title with Joel Embiid? That is today's poll question. Give me a W for win or an N for never. I'm so frustrated with this team right now. I don't even know. But I don't know if you win a championship with your big as the go-to option. A lot of people are going to say, well, Nikola Jokic is going to do it this year. Have you seen what Jamal Murray has been able to do in the playoffs? In my opinion, you win with guards and you win with wings, at least winning big. All right, now to James Harden. According to Brian Windhorst, James Harden could land a 4-year, $200 million contract in NBA free agency if he opts out of that player option. That is $50 million per year for a 33-year-old who's been injured a lot over the last couple of years, has shown signs of decline, and once again had a playoff flameout. Buyer beware. Is Daryl Morey going to be able to help himself with his beloved son, the guy who he's always been infatuated with in James Harden? Now, credit to Daryl Morey. He comes to the Houston Rockets, and Harden goes from being a six-man to an MVP player and one of the more transcendent offensive players that we have ever seen. But here's my message to Daryl Morey. James Harden is that no longer. He's had a man crush on Harden for so long. Is he going to be able to get past the fact that he is the age that he is? That he has shown these signs of tread being on the tires, and he is not a winning basketball player? If Daryl Morey signs James Harden to a 4-year, $200 million deal worth $50 million per year, the back end of that is going to be awful. And we already know what's going to happen when the Sixers get into the playoffs. They're not going to be able to make a deep run because James Harden is incapable of carrying the load because he's never been able to do this throughout his career. Daryl Morey's love for Harden and what Harden might demand scares the you-know-what out of me, considering that this Sixers offseason is the biggest of my lifetime at 31 years old. Now, with James Harden, there are pros and cons for sure. He led the league in assists, nearly 11. He runs a two-man game beautifully with Joel Embiid. His production, very, very good in the regular season. 21 points per game, 44% from the field, nearly 39% from three. He did, to his credit, win Game 1 and Game 4 against Boston. But when you're making $50 million per year, homie, you got to show up games 5, 6, and 7. You got to close that series out. He's a 3-level scorer for sure, but sometimes the ball dies when he is way too ball dominant because he doesn't give it up until there's 3 seconds left on the shot clock. And for James Harden, 33 years old, how does he age? Not always in great shape. He is way too inconsistent. No championship pedigree, and he lacks accountability. I don't think that this dude is all that good of a leader. Would you pay Harden $50 million per year? No way for me. P for pay, E for expensive. You let me know down in the comments section. Also, if you want to get your bets in throughout the NBA playoffs, Major League Baseball, NFL season going to be here before we know it. It's only one place to go to. It's BetUS. Promo code chat125 using that link, chatsports.com/bet for a 125% deposit bonus. What that means is you put in $100, you get $125 back. BetUS is where it's at. Let's round out the show with this. The latest on the 76ers head coaching search, Nick Nurse, Monty Williams, Nick Nurse, formerly of the Raptors, Monty Williams, formerly of the Phoenix Suns, and Adrian Griffin, the assistant coach of the Toronto Raptors, are the finalists to become the Bucks head coach. And the rumor mill has it that Frank Vogel is taking a flight to Philadelphia to interview for the Sixers head coaching job to replace Doc Rivers. That makes a lot of sense because when Adrian Wojnarowski had that report last week about Doc Rivers being canned, Frank Vogel was on the list of the initial candidates, and that's what we talked about over the weekend right here on 76ers Now. Here's where things get interesting for the Sixers head coaching search. They could lose out on the best candidates for a couple of reasons. The Milwaukee Bucks job with Giannis is a better gig than the Sixers job. The Phoenix Suns job is much better than the Sixers job because you still have an elite bucket getter in Devin Booker and Kevin Durant. And I think that Joe Mazzulla's days with the Boston Celtics are numbered. So that would be 3 jobs that are all better than the 76ers open gig. Why? They have better rosters. They're better constructed to win an NBA championship. And they're more appealing jobs for the top coaches on the market right now. So for Nick Nurse, the Sixers might lose out on him, even though he has those Daryl Morey connections, because if you're Nick Nurse, Monty Williams, or another one of these elite head coaching candidates, are you going to go to the Suns, Bucks, or Celtics? Or are you going to go to Philadelphia with all of the questions on this roster? I'm taking those other gigs. And Joe Mazzulla, with the way that the Celtics are playing, falling apart against the Miami Heat, Eric Spoelstra running laps around Joe Mazzulla, and the fact that he admitted he didn't have the Celtics ready to play in a pivotal do-or-die Game 3, and they have just decided to roll over against Miami because Jimmy Butler's been their daddy. I think Mazzulla's getting canned. That could be another coach who goes there instead of Philadelphia. Who is the top option to replace Doc Rivers? I'm going Nick Nurse. I talked about it over the weekend. That's my guy. I believe that the Sixers have enabled a soft culture since the process era started. And you look at some of the high-level championship players, like over the last couple of decades, right? A team's identity emulates their superstar's identity. Michael Jordan, Larry Bird, Kobe Bryant, LeBron James, Steph Curry, Kevin Durant, Jimmy Butler, Dirk Nowitzki. What are they? Dogs. What is Joel Embiid? Scared of the moment. If you want to interact with me on Twitter and Instagram, you can find me at Chase_Senior. Same handle on both social media platforms. Don't forget to subscribe, and when you do that, make sure you turn on your notifications. Therefore, anytime we push out a video or maybe live shows in the future, you'll be notified.